What surprises me most about this series of videos and studying lost media is just how much material does still exist but is either unreleased or completely overlooked. When it comes to overlooked, ITV's The Frighteners, a non-hosted horror anthology show, definitely comes to mind.
You going round a twist. Now you're here, now you're not. Now you see him, now you don't.
For my birthday, I really had no idea what I wanted beyond some more films and television shows to add to my DVD collection, so when my dad and his girlfriend asked me what I wanted, I sent them a few links from Amazon. Remembering I already had The Frighteners on my Amazon wishlist because I thought it looked interesting, I decided to send it through, and they bought it for me, among a few other things which I might talk about in other videos at a later date. Produced by LWT, The Frighteners was unfortunate in that it fell into obscurity quite bluntly because of mishandling and a lack of care from its broadcaster. London scheduling was only allowed to take place on Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays, and no suitable slot was ever found for the national schedule, so the series was largely unbroadcast outside of London. It was shown super late, normally 5 minutes after midnight, so while it was a good time for viewers to watch something that could potentially, well, frighten them, it wasn't a good time for them to appreciate and understand the deeper layers of the scripts. To make matters worse, the longest gap the series took between broadcasts was a good 8 months, with You Remind Me of Someone being broadcast in September 1972, and The Classroom in May 1973, and there were only 3 episodes left to be shown including that one, with the final broadcast episode, Have a Nice Time at the Zoo Darling, being delayed by a couple weeks. So yeah, not exactly a healthy time slot for such a show.
I hate monkeys. They're like awful deformed children.
Each episode has a unique narrative and characters, and the writer and director are always different, but the show has a few overarching themes with each play, the main one being how the plots work.
You know what, sir? Old Legsy here. Regular's clockwork, he'd look up the army list, see if you were still serving.
Usually you follow someone who you believe to be the bad guy, but by the halfway point or towards the end, you quickly discover through a pretty tense and well-crafted build-up that the other character you either sympathise for or at least hate a little less is actually the true villain of the story. My favourite example of this was in Miss Mouse, where after a guy kills his wife in an alcohol-fueled struggle following a party they both hated, we discover that their landlord they nicknamed Miss Mouse was listening in through the intercom system she has set up throughout the building, and was using to listen to their child in case he woke up or was in trouble while they were out, and instead of going to the police, she wants the guy to marry her and give her the comfort she's always desired.
Shall I tell you what I'm like?
Another thing each episode has in common is that they always focus on ordinary day-to-day people as opposed to anyone special like writers, radio hosts, or television actors, with an emphasis on the human condition and how life in the 70s could be a truly terrifying thing for the average person, from married couples to war veterans.
Fair enough. Now me and Legsy will take turns.
No blood, guts, creaking doors, ghosts or anything like that, just anxiety, confusion, and suspense. The show had a pretty good cast and some great writing talent behind it. Actors like John Thor, Ian Holm, Tom Bell, Ian Hendry, Victor Madden and Ray Smith are just to name a few, and to be fair, they do give great performances. Mike Hodges, the guy who wrote and directed the Michael Caine starring classic Get Carter, penned The Manipulators, and well, while I didn't quite understand what I was watching until the end, I did enjoy it. Even William Trevor, a famous playwright, penned an episode. Even if you've never heard of any of the writers or directors, watching it, you have to admit most of them do know their craft. But one thing I don't really like about the way the show is presented is how it's made out to be scarier than it actually is. The DVD cover art even implies not only a stranger danger aspect I'll talk about shortly, but it also includes the silhouette of some kind of zombie, I think, but that just isn't the case.
Well, that was something to do with a piece of Dennis's private skullduggery. There's never been any love lost there, aren't there?
There's nothing supernatural and it relies pretty much entirely on psychological elements to get its intended effect, but even then, I don't think I'd call this a horror show.
Oh, I'm so pleased.
It is labelled as such, but it works much better as a dark thriller with horror elements, which would be a much better way of advertising it in my opinion. I don't really know how to structure a plot review thoroughly, I mean it is an anthology after all, so I guess I'll just go from my favourite to my least favourite.
Come on, boy.
My favourite was easily Have a Nice Day at the Zoo Darling, simply because of how dark and cynical it was. Not only that, but it's one of 2 plays shot in black and white due to a technician strike at LWT, and it really builds on the cold, wintry atmosphere the play is going for. At first you think it's some kind of stranger danger story where a young girl played by Gillian Bailey is being stalked by some paedophile played by Jeffrey Balden, especially when she's coming home from church in the dark, but after being followed to the zoo we come to learn they actually know each other. Even though it's initially quite vague, it's later made abundantly clear he's the girl's father and he abandoned her and her mother, played by Helen Lindsay, when the girl was young.
That's what I meant.
We cut back to scenes that show us the mother with the girl's typically old-fashioned grandmother, played by Elsie Wagstaff, and the mother makes it clear she actually wouldn't mind if her husband came back, but the girl is eerily adult in the way she talks, displaying almost no emotion when her own dad confesses how much he regrets the choices he made, such as leaving with another woman only for her to pass away, which ultimately led to him wanting to reconnect with his daughter in the first place. It has a pretty dark ending where the girl just leaves him to suffer in an old broken greenhouse in the zoo, and it's strongly implied that he hangs himself through an excellent shot of a noose through a crack in the greenhouse ceiling. So yeah, pretty morbid and nihilistic stuff. But it has an atmosphere and an unforgettable story, with the zoo setting in the winter especially adding to it. It's not quite horror, but it has that feeling and it works perfectly. Miss Mouse was probably my second favourite, but it came close to being my favourite for quite a few reasons. Coincidentally, it was also shot in black and white for similar reasons, and it just has an awesome atmosphere. Straight away you feel the tension between the husband and the wife, but you really don't expect it to go as downhill as it does. If you've seen the film Waves, you know that if you're a bigger, stronger guy, you should never push a smaller, fragile woman over, because if she hits her head the wrong way and suffers blunt force trauma, you've just killed a person and there's no going back, which is exactly what Arthur, played by John Normington, does to his wife Lucille, played by Alison Fisk. Miss Cobb, as she's actually called, played by Heather Canning, is a suitably strange woman, and her motivations to blackmail Arthur into marriage, while a little far-fetched, is pretty entertaining and makes sense, playing on that psychological aspect of dreary 70s life, particularly the ones where you still live with your elderly mother, landlording for a building full of dysfunctional families.
I heard these noises on the speaker.
Everything that can go wrong does, with the 2-year-old accidentally locking Arthur and Cobb in the bedroom with Lucille's corpse, and the two of them forced to get the assistance of Mrs. Cobb, played by Madeline Thomas, who was listening to those two using the intercom as well.
If you could throw the front door keys out of the window onto the grass, I can come and let you out.
She wants in on the action and, reluctantly, Arthur agrees, only for Miss Cobb to promise they'll kill Mrs. Cobb later so it can just be them together with Arthur's now motherless son. It ends abruptly, but it works in the play's favour because of how already bleak the story was. It kind of reminded me of one of those YouTube horror short films. You know, the ones that pretty much instantly build up to the main threat does what it does, and then it just ends abruptly. It's pretty awesome stuff. Arthur was a guy that, while unforgivable, made a mistake, but that mistake has resulted in his life being forever changed by truly psychopathic individuals.
Well, I might have been, well, you know.
Oh, that's all right.
I really loved Bed and Breakfast because, like Have a Nice Time at the Zoo, Darling, it did the they're not actually the bad guys narrative really well. We actually take the perspective of the initially villainous characters, a married couple called Anthony and Olive Ashworth, played by Ian Hendry and Wendy Gifford, who put up a fake bed and breakfast sign on a tree just outside a desolate house in the countryside. Pretending like they're desperate for lodgings, they wake up the elderly Cartwright couple, played by John Welsh and Gabrielle Day, and essentially demand that the couple take them in for the night.
Hey, what?
Come on, darling, we'll sleep in the car.
Yeah, by my gate, what sign?
What works is Anthony and Olive are actually really unlikable characters, and the play really makes you feel sorry for the Cartwrights, but through some well-crafted and well-performed dialogue, we gradually learn that the Cartwrights were responsible for a truly horrific and really selfish crime. When Anthony's father went to a bed and breakfast owned by the Cartwrights years ago, he fell down the stairs and the Cartwrights presumed him dead. But instead of properly checking or helping him, they decided to throw him in a ditch to avoid losing their recently opened business.
Sleep in the car, sleep in a ditch for all I care.
Go on, leave before I call the police.
No, I don't think you want us to sleep in a ditch. Not really.
Turns out the man, played by Harry Douglas, survived, but was left crippled and has since deteriorated to the point he can barely speak fully formed sentences. Kind of like me. Instead of calling the police or killing the Cartwrights, the Ashworths give them the worst punishment imaginable. They have their chauffeur, played by Roy Boyd, deliver the old man to the house and leave him there for the Cartwrights to look after for the rest of his and their elderly days.
He doesn't need a bed, never does. Always sleeps in a chair.
There are a few way too obvious variables with the plot, like how nothing could have worked if the Cartwrights had simply called the police or refused entry to the Ashworth couple, but it's still a really entertaining and very tense 25 minutes of pure suspense.
Father's tired. He's had a long journey. He must sleep.
Who the hell is that out there?
Old Comrades is mostly set in one room and effectively plays the most like, well, a stage play as a television episode.
Why are we waiting?
I think it was originally submitted to the industry as a theatrical performance, but made its way to the small screen as an episode of The Frighteners. It really does answer the age-old question, can something be set almost entirely in one room?
Unfortunately.
Yes, it can. In this one, retired Army Major Rutherford,
Major Rutherford?
played by Robert Urquhart, is visited by two of his former comrades, Wood and Leggett, played by John Thor and George Inn. It starts off pretty normal. You get the vibe these two are a little eccentric, whereas Rutherford is clearly more formal, but this is a thriller with horror elements, so of course it quickly gets dark, and when I say that, I mean Wood and Leggett hold Rutherford
Major Rutherford?
at gunpoint and begin to reveal how Rutherford
Major Rutherford?
is the bad guy.
The chap certainly seemed to have prospered since her army days.
Yes, well, we haven't done too badly, Gerald. She mentioned a subject. Oh, you don't mind me calling you Gerald?
Turns out he was responsible for letting some cargo get stolen, but instead of taking responsibility, he blamed Wood and Leggett, who were court-martialed and sent to the workhouse. Lengthy periods of their life they'll never get back. Instead of killing their former superior, they decide to toy with him, playing a game where he has to run left and right while they aim and try to shoot him, missing on purpose and causing him to become almost fatally exhausted due to his heart condition.
Absolutely right.
After they've had their fun, they leave, and Rutherford
Major Rutherford?
looks on the verge of death. It takes place in real time, so you feel every mounting bit of tension and threat that comes with the increasingly hostile attitudes of Wood and Leggett. While Rutherford is a suitably stubborn and proud man who tries to keep his composure, even when threatened and reminded of what a truly scummy person he is. It, again, has a really great atmosphere, and the stage-like feel of it adds the mounting direness of the situation.
Well, good night, Major Rutherford. Sir? Major Rutherford?
The Disappearing Man does psychological distress of a main character best in my opinion. While the others I've talked about are certainly psychological and go into the minds of the characters a fair bit, this one really doubles down. Harry, played by Victor Madden, is just a normal guy, but he's also completely superfluous, being ignored by everyone around him. Co-workers, policemen, bureaucrats, bystanders, and even his own family just seem to forget he exists, even when he's standing right in front of them. Because of this, Harry comes to the conclusion he's disappearing from the planet.
In all fairness and consideration of you, Vi, I could not describe Harry as ruthless. Even the job he got,
The play is a little confusing in that sometimes I'm not entirely clear on whether or not Harry is actually being ignored or if he thinks he is. The implications throughout and at the end of the play imply, almost comically, that Harry is just so unimportant people both intentionally and unintentionally forget he exists. A good example in one scene is when Harry goes to the toilet midway through a conversation with his co-worker. The co-worker is spooked by Harry when he comes back, having not even realised that Harry left.
You bloody Houdini. You were skiving.
My personal favourite is when the lady at the shop just flat out doesn't realise he was standing there and rudely lets some other lady be served before him.
Please.
And what for you, Mrs. Hart?
Same as usual, please.
I was first.
What?
I've been standing there for bloody hours.
I'm sorry, Mr. Henshaw, I didn't see you.
What? What did you say?
I didn't see you.
What do you mean you didn't see me?
Don't falter. Ignore him.
There's also these two policemen that just flat out decide to ignore Harry, and it all culminates in him going on a killing spree with a revolver on the tube in the play's climax. I'm pretty sure that, like the Joker movie, this play is supposed to represent those in society that are ignored, forgotten about, and go crazy because of it. For example, some kind of petition Harry made to the government years ago has just gone missing from the record, so not even the MP knows who he is.
Harry Henshaw, 16 the prefabs, Harwood Lane, Southwest 6.
He's literally just not that important. In fact, he's completely unimportant, which, again, has a comical sadness to it. But it wouldn't be the Frighteners if it didn't end horribly for everyone involved.
I'm not even on the housing list, and I've been on that for years.
How much money did he leave for the rads? And I got a few bottles there as well.
Harry will probably be remembered and acknowledged like he'd much rather be, but now for the wrong reasons. He's going to jail and a bunch of people are dead on their way home from work. It's also one of the more fast-paced plays, so I completely recommend it if you just want a quick, darkly funny and also unnerving experience.
All the time?
Not when I'm not here.
Ah.
The treat was, for all the right reasons, just plain weird and ridiculous. It's about a male nurse called Gordon, played by Ian Holm, who takes 3 veterans named Leslie, Cyril and Henry for a day out. They are played by Leslie French, Liam Redmond and John Barrett in that order. It starts off innocent enough, but then 2 of them become increasingly aggressive and become incredibly hostile towards Gordon. It's basically implied Gordon might have been in some kind of homosexual relationship and knows what happened to a co-worker who mysteriously disappeared, and you'd think it would go in the direction of Leslie and Henry getting a confession out of Gordon, therefore exposing him as the true bad guy of the story.
Henry, Sergeant.
Down!
However, instead it goes off the rails and the veterans start reliving their fighting days with the use of explosives and makeshift guns. Gordon manages to calm them down, even convincing them to play hide and seek, him and Cyril as the hiders, Leslie and Henry as the seekers. It becomes almost surreal, with Gordon and Cyril being cornered in a giant bush as Leslie and Henry constantly whack at them with large sticks, preventing them from leaving. They eventually force Gordon into killing Cyril as they bully him for the confession thereafter, and the play just kind of ends there. It's really strange, and the second half is a lot darker and weirder than the first, but I enjoyed it for the almost nonsensical nightmare it was. It's not perfect, but it was just a bit of fun. It never dragged for me, even if it was a little repetitive in the last 10 minutes or so, and the location work done for this story in particular really gave it some organic life that I think a tale like this needed. The Night of the Stag is just plain good. It's a little talky and slower paced for my complete liking, but it's by no means sluggish and it has an intriguing plot, interesting characters and some great direction, which is complemented by the way it's edited, particularly in the build-up to the shock ending. It's a more risque story focusing on Ginny, a mentally unstable woman played by Jenny Linden, who is the lover of Mike, a soon-to-be married man played by Robin Ellis. Ginny convinces Mike to sleep with her one last time, but such a decision can only end in disaster.
There are other things.
Is she more intelligent than I am?
The play mostly just focuses on these two and the breakdown of their relationship, and while Ginny clearly isn't sound of mind, Mike isn't exactly an angel. He's kind of an arsehole, and he did everything Ginny does to him to himself by getting into the relationship in the first place. She feels cast aside by the woman he decided to marry, and if she can't have Mike, no one can. It's one of those episodes where no one's really in the right and you don't root for anyone. It's dark and significantly more nasty, but in an entertaining way, and it helps that Ginny is an entertaining character and Linden portrays her excellently.
Oh, please don't insult me. You haven't had value for money.
The play ends with Linden murdering Mike while he's in the bath, and to be honest, this guy's an idiot. He really expected her to just leave while he was washing as his fiancée was coming home, and sure enough, not only is there another woman in the house, but Mike's had his throat slit, and it ends on a perfectly eerie close-up of Ginny's hollow but beautiful eyes as she walks down the stairs, Mike's fiancée screaming in the background. It kind of reminded me of Psycho, and even though I'm not entirely sure why, I think that's compliment enough. I just wish it was a little bit more fleshed out, and I'm glad I bring that up because that's a little nitpick I have with the series. That being, most of these concepts have the potential to be a longer and more fleshed out play. I'm mostly happy with the 25-26 minute format, especially for episodes like Old Comrades and Have a Nice Time at the Zoo, but when I think about other anthologies like Dead of Night and Play for Today, which are as long as 50 to 90 minutes, I wish episodes like Miss Mouse and Night of the Stag took full advantage of their already well crafted stories, characters and dialogue and were a little longer, because you could definitely do more with them. At first, I really didn't understand the Manipulators. All I really got watching it for the first time was that 2 guys working for some mysterious government agency are doing surveillance on a deteriorating married couple, audiotaping their increasingly tense arguments. One of the guys is new and has to commit a murder whether he likes it or not, but then the play keeps cutting to what I assume is said agency testing female recruits on their computer skills.
2 lines of the alphabet. And please wait for the word now before you hit the key.
One of the guys watching the couple wants to put a stop to everything, but the superior disagrees. I won't say any more than that because, genuinely, this had a pretty good, quite shocking twist that, while it didn't make my jaw drop, I certainly didn't regret watching it. I'd love to see it again to maybe better appreciate it and up my rating because it's definitely a second viewing experience. The 25-minute format works perfectly here, and while it is a little confusing, once you know what's going on, I imagine it'd be a much easier watch.
With your help.
With my help.
You Remind Me of Someone is an intriguing one. In it, some guy called Norris, played by Jack Headley, bids his wife farewell one morning and decides to go to Manchester for God knows what reason. On the way he hitchhikes with a lorry driver played by Barry Jackson, and the conversation between the two men becomes increasingly strange and just uncomfortable.
Well, I do hope that's true. It's only being friendly, it's like saying, how are you?
As it's a story that relies solely on the tension from the actors, a 2-seat vehicle is perfect for achieving a certain claustrophobia, which is perfect for adding to the ever-growing tension. Norris seems like a normal person, but, of course, he increasingly becomes more unstable and clearly has some kind of devious plan for the man he's been picked up by. Sure enough, he accuses the man of having an affair with his wife and holds him at gunpoint. It kept my attention throughout and had a great atmosphere, but it has that same problem where the 25-minute format impacts it negatively. It doesn't have a surprise twist or anything because, from the get-go, I thought it was pretty obvious what happened. Turns out Norris killed his wife, and when she hasn't come out to perform her usual task with one of the neighbouring little girls, she's found dead. The play cleverly switches between night and day for these scenes, and it helps to add a bit of dissuasion for the viewer, but not to the point where it tricked me into thinking that maybe Norris wasn't crazy and the man was in fact sleeping with his wife. It ends, again, rather abruptly with Norris killing the driver and hitchhiking with a couple who he's at first nice to, but after about 30 seconds he instantly becomes horrible, which is a darkly nice implication the cycle will continue again.
Just a bit of a mess in the back here, isn't it? How far are you going? I've got to go to Newcastle.
But it just left me wanting more. It's another one that'd maybe benefit from a bit more length and fleshing out, but the direction is great and the script is sharp, so it does entertain.
And you're like this bloke she knows in Newcastle.
The classroom, or the schoolroom as it's sometimes called, was an interesting one. It's another mostly one-room setting with only 2 characters focused on, those being the retiring teacher Miss Smith and her former unhinged pupil Macon, played by Patience Collier and Clive Swift.
Miss Smith.
Everyone seems to really like Miss Smith and offers her their best wishes at her goodbye ceremony at the school, but Macon waits specifically for everyone to leave before confronting her, and things quickly take a dark turn. Because she made his life at school hell, he has a revenge plan for her.
Well, you said. Jamesy Machin doesn't know what a baby horse is called.
It's easy to forget. It's
Pony, Miss Smith, I said. And you said pony. Jamesy Machin thinks a baby horse is called a pony.
Essentially what happens is Miss Smith spins the tables on Macon, a little predictably so if you're familiar with the format of the show, because he never stopped being that insecure little boy in the classroom that Smith would always single out and treat unfairly.
What are you doing?
sit down.
Please, Miss Smith.
What really saves this one from being a drag is the performances from Collier and Swift. Swift does a great job capturing the vengeful inner child of Macon, while Collier perfectly portrays Smith as a woman not to be trifled with. So when she opens up to Macon and calms him down, one is left to question whether she's being genuinely remorseful for what she did, or faking it to save her own life. It's also really well directed, but it doesn't fully utilise the same time stage play style used in old Comrades. It has these surreal cuts to a window shot of the playground, I think of what was supposed to be a young Macon, looking up at and haunting Smith with guilt. It's not a bad entry at all, but it is just pretty good and not one of my favourites. I'd watch it again, but probably just to introduce someone else to the series, simply because it uses that common format so well.
Nerves.
Glad to Be of Help is about Conservative MP Tony Wardle, played by John Standing. After wrapping up his scheduled evening of meeting constituents and sending his aide home, a man named Bob Blore, played by Joe Lynch, arrives and asks that Wardle see him immediately. Blore is skittish and muddled, which Wardle initially concedes may be due to his previous career as a professional boxer, but then Blore begins to tell him of a tragic story about his deceased son and demands that Wardle helps.
Murchison Drive.
Murchison Drive. Didn't you once win the middleweight championship?
That was a long time ago.
It's a pretty good commentary on Tory politics, as they tend to make promises they never keep, but then again, so do Labour. And if you live in this country, you know not to trust either. The play has a permanent feeling of uneasiness all the way throughout, and it builds on that tension beautifully, particularly thanks to the performance of Lynch.
I'm here on serious business, Mr. Wardle. Can't you tell the difference?
His performance definitely suggests some form of insanity, be it early onset Alzheimer's or insanity due to grief, and while it ends a bit too abruptly for my liking, and I didn't really get the plot until I read a bit more about it afterwards, I did really like it and I'd be willing to give it a second chance.
I'm really very sorry about your son.
Firing Squad is a bit more like an earlier episode called The Minder in that it's more of a crime drama. A mercenary called Pitt, played by Edward Brayshaw, switched sides in an African coup several years ago and returns home to the UK with his dubiously gotten gains. Sold out by the warlord he put in power, on his return his former associates led by Mr. Bancroft, played by Michael Craig, are waiting for him and take him to Stamford Bridge, where they have a plan to take their share from him.
All right, so I was a bastard 3 years ago. But I also saved your lives. I wouldn't have gone that far. That's why I arranged for the pickup to be on the other side of the river. I stuck my neck out so nothing would happen to you.
He's lying. You have 60 seconds to tell us, Pitt.
It had a solid twist I didn't see coming, and while it's well acted and the characters are entertaining, it's just not that much of an interesting story, with the twist being the best part in my opinion. I especially like the location filming in this one, perfectly capturing a sunny on the surface, dark underneath African setting, before going right back to a more gritty English one. They complement each other oddly well.
Confirm that your friend left with his valuable merchandise on Pan Am Flight 744 ETA Heathrow 1815 hours.
Jumping into my least favourite, I didn't really care for and don't have a lot to say about The Minder. In my opinion, it's a generic gangster story where a mob boss, played by Kenneth J. Warren, is made an invalid due to a leg injury before being busted out of a prison hospital, and one of his goons, played by Tom Bell, is plotting to sell him out and kill him for a rival gang. It's told in a needlessly confusing way and it's just not very fun. It's also the longest, clocking in at 28 minutes, and you really feel every minute. It feels less like a unique television play and more like a typical low-budget London mobster short film, and that's not a genre I'm all that keen on. It has a pretty great atmosphere thanks to its industrial tower block setting, diegetic sound of a nearby railway, and some pretty good cinematography, but it doesn't really offer all that much. I made sure it was the first episode I watched because I saw it had the lowest IMDb user rating just beneath Firing Squad, and I wanted to get it out of the way. To be honest, I'm glad I did.
Wake him up.
The show was shot entirely on 16mm film, colour for all but Miss Mouse and Have a Nice Time at the Zoo Darling, which gives it a beautifully organic feeling throughout and certainly adds to the tension for a lot of them. It also allows for the more claustrophobic shots in episodes like You Remind Me of Someone and Glad to Be of Help, uncanny angles in The Treat, and more fast-paced action like the fight between the married couple and Miss Mouse.
Shut your filthy mouth! Shut your dirty, filthy mouth!
It also allows for more interesting and trippy editing choices which complement the tone of the more psychological episodes, but in all honesty, they didn't take full advantage of the fact that these are all film programs. What do I mean by that? Well, the quality of the episodes on the DVD at least is just kind of terrible.
Something is moving in the box. What is it?
The audio sounds fine, it's all in sync, and there's only a few age of the film related instances of audio dropouts, but they clearly didn't restore the picture of the films at all. I don't know if they actually processed the original film negatives, which I'm pretty sure do exist, or if they just used the D2 digital videotape copies, but it's really low quality stuff. It isn't exactly damage to the point of discoloration or warping on the film. I'm also talking about heavy scratches and dirt, which can sometimes be charming, but this is the kind of show that would benefit hugely from a proper restoration. I'm not talking high definition, I mean, after all, it is a forgotten show that probably wouldn't see many people buying it on 1080p Blu-ray, but just some cleanup would have been fine.
Lance Corporal Chipper would, and Private Legsy Leggett. The terrible twins.
To be utterly fair, the black and white really complements the Miss Mouse and Zoo episodes, and the uncleanliness of the material also adds to their atmosphere quite a bit, but I can't say the same for the colour episodes. The DVD is also incredibly bare. There's no chapter selection, subtitles, or anything. You just pop it in and it goes straight to the episode selection menu with the Zombie Stranger Danger clickbait cover art. It does come with a little booklet offering some detail on the production, and even a recollection of Gillian Bailey about her time filming the show. As she puts it, "I'm at least glad this series survived and is able to be seen." Overall, I think I'd give The Frighteners a 7 out of 10. I rated all the episodes individually like I do with all anthologies, the highest rating being a 9 for Miss Mouse and Zoo, while the lowest was a 5 for The Minder. I'd say it's exactly that for me, a 70 to 30, because I absolutely love a handful of the show, but some episodes just don't quite take full advantage of their premises, and it really is that 25-minute runtime restriction that affects them. And it sucks that the longest episode that slightly overstepped the time mark just so happens to be the worst one.
I think it was you done. 4 bastard months in the hole.
I'd definitely recommend it if you're into older archive television like I am, or if you just think it looks interesting, and the genuinely clever twists in some episodes and the building tension of others are sure to appease to most fans of the thriller genre. Like I said though, it definitely works better as a psychological suspense thriller with horror elements, so definitely don't expect anything blood-chilling as the cover might suggest. If you can't be bothered to pick up the DVD, then I'm pretty sure the Internet Archive has all 13 episodes uploaded if you look hard enough. Definitely don't do what I did and watch The Minder first, because if I hadn't bought the DVD, I would have given up after watching it. Again, it is an anthology, so watch it in any order you like, but I'd say start with either Miss Mouse or the Zoo episode just to get a really good feel of how great the show can be. If you can't stand black and white and want a colour episode to begin with, start with either Old Comrades or Bed and Breakfast. Thank you for watching, please like and subscribe.